Most people are terrified of debt. It keeps them up at night, drowns them in interest, and makes them feel like they're constantly behind. But here's the twist: the rich love debt. They use it, deliberately, strategically, to build more wealth while others avoid it at all costs. So what do they know that you don't? And how can you use this same mindset to stop being afraid of debt and start using it to your advantage? Let's break it down.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never...
The debt lie you were told.
We've all heard the same advice growing up. Stay out of debt. Debt is often portrayed as dangerous, irresponsible, and something to be ashamed of. And in many cases, like credit card debt or payday loans, that's true. But the real problem isn't debt itself. It's not knowing how to use it. The truth is, debt isn't always bad. In fact, for people who understand how money works, debt can be one of the most powerful financial tools available. Think about this. Wealthy people often borrow money not because they need it, but because they understand leverage. They understand how to turn borrowed money into income-producing assets. Meanwhile, most people only experience debt as a burden. That's because they use it to fund liabilities, things that lose value, not assets. They go into debt for things like new cars, vacations, or gadgets. The wealthy, on the other hand, go into debt to acquire real estate, grow businesses, or invest in education that pays off. You weren't told this in school. You were just taught to fear debt. But that mindset is exactly what keeps many people stuck.
How the rich use debt to build wealth.
So, how exactly do the rich use debt differently? First, they use debt to buy assets, not liabilities. Assets are things that put money in your pocket: rental properties, businesses, stocks that generate dividends. For example, someone might take a loan to buy a property, rent it out, and use the rental income to pay off the loan, while also gaining long-term appreciation. Second, they understand leverage. Leverage means using borrowed money to increase the return on an investment. If you put in $50,000 of your own money, and borrow $200,000 to buy a property worth $250,000, you're now controlling a large asset with a small amount of your own capital. If the property grows in value, your return is magnified. Third, the rich use low-interest debt strategically. Instead of tying up all their cash, they borrow at a lower rate and keep their own money invested where it can earn more. For instance, if they can borrow at 5% but earn 8% elsewhere, they've made a 3% profit on borrowed money. Finally, they separate good debt from bad debt. Good debt builds wealth. Bad debt destroys it. They never borrow for short-term pleasure, only for long-term growth. This isn't about taking on risk recklessly. It's about understanding how to make money work harder through smart financial structures.
What most people do wrong with debt.
Here's where most people get stuck. They use debt emotionally, not strategically. Instead of using loans to build assets, they borrow for things that lose value instantly, like luxury gadgets, vacations, or lifestyle upgrades they can't afford. Second, they ignore the cost of debt. They swipe credit cards without realizing the 20% interest compounds fast. A $1,000 purchase can cost $1,800 if paid off slowly. That's not financial leverage. That's a trap. Third, many people don't track their borrowing. They don't know how much they owe, to whom, or at what rate. They treat debt as a last resort, not a financial tool, and that mindset creates chaos, not control. And worst of all, they avoid learning. Because money feels stressful or confusing, they put their heads down and hope things fix themselves. But hope isn't a strategy. The difference between wealthy people and the rest isn't how much debt they have, it's how they use it. The wealthy study debt. The rest avoid it. If you want to escape the debt trap, the first step is understanding the rules of the game.
How you can use debt to build wealth responsibly.
Let's talk about how to actually use debt the smart way. Step 1. Only borrow to build assets, not liabilities. That means using debt to buy things that either grow in value or generate income, not to fund short-term pleasures. A house you rent out, a business that brings in cash, or even a high-value certification that boosts your career. These can qualify as productive debt. Step 2. Understand the return versus interest. Before borrowing, ask, will this bring me more than it costs me? If you take a loan with 6% interest but the asset earns you 10% annually, that's smart leverage. But if the asset doesn't produce anything, it's just expensive. Step 3. Have a plan before you borrow. Never take debt without knowing your exit, how and when you'll pay it back. Treat every loan like an investment decision. Would you invest in this deal if it wasn't your own life? Step 4. Build your credit and protect your risk. Good credit means cheaper borrowing. Responsible use, paying on time, keeping debt to income low, gives you access to better financial tools. But also, don't bet the farm. Use fixed rates when possible, avoid balloon payments, and never risk your essentials for speculation. Step 5. Think long-term. Most of the wealthy don't get rich from one risky move. They build over decades using safe, calculated leverage, not gambling. Patience, not panic, is what builds sustainable wealth.
Why the poor avoid debt while the rich embrace it?
There's a reason debt feels like a trap for some people, and like a ladder for others. It's not just knowledge. It's conditioning. Many of us were raised to believe that all debt is dangerous. Maybe we saw family members crushed by loans or credit cards. Maybe we were taught that borrowing is always a sign of failure. But the truth is, the poor are often taught to fear debt, while the rich are taught to understand and control it. The poor avoid debt to stay safe. The rich manage debt to grow faster. It's not that wealthy people love risk, it's that they study it, contain it, and use it. They build buffers. They diversify. They know that with the right structure, debt isn't the enemy, ignorance is. What's worse than bad debt? Not knowing the difference. Financial education, the kind you don't get in school, is the real divide between using debt or being used by it. So if you've avoided debt all your life, ask yourself, is it because of logic or fear? When you understand how money moves, you stop being afraid of the tools that move it.
What you do with this matters.
Debt isn't just numbers. It's mindset. If you see debt only as danger, you'll run from it forever, and possibly miss the very tools that could have changed your life. But if you learn how the rich use debt, with strategy, with control, and with purpose, you begin playing a completely different financial game. You don't have to go into massive debt tomorrow, but you do need to change the way you think about it today. So let's talk. Do you believe debt is more dangerous or more powerful? Have you ever used debt to invest or build something? Or has it mostly caused stress? What's one lesson you were taught about debt growing up? And do you still believe it? Leave your answer in the comments. Let's make this a conversation, not just a video. And if you found this helpful, subscribe for more financial clarity, not noise. Learn like the rich. Think like the rich. Then move smarter than the system expected. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray.